All right, everybody, thank you. Welcome. So I now call to order this meeting, the special meeting of the Anchorage Assembly. Today's July 19th. We're on schedule from 1:40 to 2:10, but I think that this will probably exceed the budgeted amount of time. At some point soon, we'll do a motion to extend when we figure out how much time we think we need. With that, I would ask the clerk to take the roll.
Assemblymember Myers is absent.
Excused.
Assemblymember Martinez.
Present.
Member Littlefield.
Here.
Member Rivera.
Present.
Member Johnson.
Here.
Member Constant.
Here.
Member Zalatow.
Here.
Member Bronga.
Here.
Member Volland.
Happy to be here.
Member Brawley.
Here.
Member Salt.
Danny Schultz here.
And Member Perez Verdia.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, would you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Brawley, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, Mr. Chair. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement recognizing the indigenous people of a place. It is a public gesture of appreciation for the past and present indigenous stewardship of the lands that we now occupy. It is an actionable statement that marks our collective movement towards decolonization and equity. The Anchorage Assembly would like to acknowledge that we gather today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina Athabascans. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. It is with gratefulness and respect that we recognize the contributions, innovations, and contemporary perspectives of the Upper Cook Inlet Dena'ina.
Thank you. So, Madam Clerk, do you want me to read them in before or just when we get to them?
When we get there.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask for a motion to change the order of the day to take up items in the following order: 6A and then 5A. Oh, excuse me, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, no. 6A, 5A, and then 4A, 4B, and then 5B.
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, second.
Moved by Mr. Perez Verdia, seconded by Ms. Brawley. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, the order of the day has been changed. We'll take up 6A, 5A, 4A, 4B, and 5B. So the first item to take up today is a public hearing item. It is AO 2024-71, an ordinance authorizing the disposal by perpetual non-exclusive gas easement to NSTAR Natural Gas Company LLC for the Inlet View Elementary School relocation project on municipal property, legally described as portions of Block 25C and 25D and parts of B Blocks 35A and 35B, View Ridge subdivision, a subdivision of the south addition to the town site at Anchorage, Plat C-99 APID 001-08352, Real Estate Department. Public hearing on this item is now open. Anyone wish to be heard on this item? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, public hearing on this item is now closed. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Perez Verdia, seconded by
Volland.
Oh, is it Mr. Volland? Moved by Mr. Volland. Thank you for the correction. Seconded by Ms. Brawley. Mr. Volland, you want to speak to it?
Just that, this construction project is already underway and want them to be able to continue getting as much work as they can before the kids have to go back to school.
Anyone else? Seeing and hearing none, members may proceed to vote. Madam Clerk?
Member Martinez.
Yes.
Member Littlefield.
Yes.
Member Rivera.
Yes.
Member Johnson.
Yes.
Member Constant.
Yes.
Member Zalatow.
Yes.
Member Bronga.
Yes.
Member Volland.
Yes.
Member Brawley.
Yes.
Member Salt.
Yes.
Member Perez Verdia.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 11-0.
On a vote of 11-0, AO 2024-71 has passed the body. NSTAR, you have your right of way for your easement. And so next up on the agenda, we have item 5A. 5A is AR 2024-218, resolution of the Anchorage Assembly submitting a request for a 2-year extension to resolve disagreements regarding the proposed Fish and Wildlife Program of the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project. Also included is AM 557-2024, comments to the governor from the municipality of Anchorage in response to stakeholder comments to the Eklutna Hydropower Hydroelectric Project's proposed final Fish and Wildlife Program. But I'm also going to read into the record the substitute versions. We have the A version, so it's AM 557-2024A, which is comments to the governor from the municipality of Anchorage in response to stakeholder comments to the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project's proposed final Fish and Wildlife Program put forth on April 25, 2024. And we also have AO 2024-218S, a resolution of the Anchorage Assembly formally submitting its comments as the majority owner of the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project as required by 1991 Fish and Wildlife Agreement, including a request for a 2-year extension to resolve disagreements regarding the proposed final Fish and Wildlife Program of the Eklutna Hydroelectric Project for gubernatorial approval. So both of these items are under the same item on the agenda. So both of these documents, the SNA version and also the originals. And so would the motion be proper to take up just one or both?
Both.
So I would ask for a motion to approve both AR 2024-218S as well as AM 557-2024A.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Vaughn, seconded by Ms. Brawley. If you don't mind, Mr. Vaughn, I'm going to turn to Ms. Zalatil.
Please.
Ms. Zalatil, if you'd like to speak to it in introduction.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I previewed last Tuesday night, if you guys can make sure mics are off, it's echoing. So as I previewed Tuesday night, that there was likely going to be a substitute version and an A version, and that's where we've landed. So what you'll see in the substitute version is really a solidification of where our position has been all along, in unity with the mayor's office and continued unity with the Native Village of Eklutna. It asks for the governor to approve the policy position that all 12 miles of the river need to have water in it. And that the solution needs to cover all 12 miles of the river. And then asks that agreement around that policy, like the governor to come with us and agree on that policy position, and then ask the parties to go back and use the pre-implementation period, which is a 3-year period as described in the 1991 agreement, to work out the details and really see what can achieve that. We still keep in our resolution our position that an extension is also a fine alternative, but this really gets us to where we've been all along, is that we want to see water throughout, we want to see fish, we want to see restoration, and we want to do so now as a unified voice, as the municipality unified with the Native Village of Eklutna. So I'm really thrilled with where we've been. This is a culmination of years and years of work that preceded my time on this body, and I'm really happy we're now speaking with a unified voice. So I would urge your support of the S version. Would also like to thank Mayor LaFrance and her team, particularly the municipal attorney, for really digging in on this issue hard and fast, and understanding what is a very complex set of issues, and really that we now have this unified voice. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'm looking for just one thing really quickly. Does anyone have pulled up the title of the filing to the RCA? Okay, so it's in the AM. So, okay, so in the parentheses at the bottom. So Ms. Brawley.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move an amendment. So I am looking at the resolution, page 2. There is a reference to a docket number on line 44. So I would like to strike the docket number there in parentheses, docket number U24, 4 X's. And I would like to replace that language with a phrase that's in one of the footnotes of the AM, and it reads, "Notice and request for acknowledgement of Anchorage's hydropower acquisition of expertise required to participate as a voting member of the Eklutna Operating Committee, comma, submitted to the RCA on July 18th, 2024." And I'll just note, it was the end of the text on footnote number 1 in that memo.
Second.
So there's a motion to amend by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Wand. So Madam Clerk, do you understand the language where you're pulling from and going to? Do members understand we're substituting the docket number because it hasn't been published with the title of the filing itself? And so that's the action that the amendment is proposing. Ms. Brawley.
Sorry, one minor clarification. I realized my intent is not to duplicate the phrase "a notice and request for acknowledgement." So actually what's being replaced is adding, starting with the phrase "of Anchorage's hydropower," et cetera, just to be very clear.
All right, any discussion on the amendment?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, so if you look, the words are already there. A notice and request for acknowledgement are already in the S version. So it's just from that point onward in the title.
Right. And it needs to be added to the S version after XXX.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I.
XXX and all that's deleted. We just don't have a docket number yet.
Okay.
Okay, so any discussion on the amendment? Is there any objection to the amendment? I'm seeing and hearing no objection to the amendment, Madam Clerk, so for your purposes, you don't have to call a vote on that one.
Thank you.
And so any further discussion? Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I do have a question. First, I just want to thank the co-sponsors on this for the really hard work they put into it, and I'm certainly here to support this this resolution. I just want to ask, since we're looking at the S version here, it seems the most substantive changes are on page 3, section 1. Could you just maybe explain briefly what the impetus was for that?
Absolutely. So there have been a lot of conversations about which way to go, what's the direction we want. And if you go back to some of the original documents, the first request was just a 2-year delay. But there was a conversation among the various stakeholders that while this is a big lift, all of it, it might be that the shorter path to our success is to lean into the language of the 1991 agreement, which calls for the governor to reconcile the differences. So that's language that comes directly out of the 1991 agreement. And so rather than ask for something that was never contemplated, we went back and cabined the request in the language of the 1991 agreement. So that's the primary effect there. We add a little bit of caveat of continuous water flow rather than to the greatest extent possible, because really our goal has been expressed the same since 2017. And then the limited reopeners conversation is a proposal that is in the final plan that was worked out between the two owners and the previous mayor, but never brought to the assembly for approval, which is what the code has required for years, that the assembly is the one to dispose of property rights on behalf of the municipality. And so one of the key elements there is the limited openers means every 10 years or so, they would come back to the question. What we're asking for is to remove that and instead make it a commitment in an ongoing fashion to continue working until such time as a resolution has been found that respects the water rights, that respects the reliable power and energy rights, and that at the same time works for the restoration of continuous water flow. And so those are the primary changes.
And just quickly, one last point to clarify. There says in here around line 8, AWU portal valve. The AWU portal valve must not be used to implement this measure. That's a policy position that the meeting is contemplating here, correct?
We previously adopted that already. That's in previous records that we have said in the last resolution. We said we aren't going to fund it. You didn't come to us. It's not approved. And so we're not hewing any new ground with that statement.
Thank you.
Yep. Any further questions? Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, first want to say thank you for all of the work from Assembly leadership on this. Other question is, of course, this has been in, I guess, partnership or in alignment with the Native Village of Eklutna all along, the position that we need to restore the river. Just to ask, was the Native Village of Eklutna apprised of this update, or did you hear any objection from them on this approach?
So I can answer affirmatively that as recently, I believe as yesterday, they saw the final drafts of the letter, the resolution, and they're strongly in support of the direction that this takes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? So for my part, I just want to say what a sea change it is to have partners, again, people we can work with and have tough conversations and move projects toward consensus and mutual agreement. This government works best when it speaks in unity between the branches. We're one municipality. If no one else wants to speak, members may proceed to vote on the motion to approve as amended. Wait. Members may proceed to vote. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Presverdia?
Yes.
Mr. Salt?
No.
Ms. Brawley?
Yes.
Mr. Volland?
Yes.
Ms. Bronga?
Yes.
Ms. Zalatel?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
I did, but I have a quick point of order, a question. Do you have who moved and seconded?
I have Daniel Volland moved and Anna Brawley seconded.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So what's your vote?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Littlefield?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the vote passes 10-1.
On a vote of 10-1, AR 2024-218S as amended and AM
557.
557-2024A have been approved by the Assembly. Thank you, everybody. Next, we have,
Chair, can I have a point of information?
sure, go ahead, Ms. Bronga.
I have seen the river said to be 11 miles long, 11.2. Does it matter that it says 12 and there's
Yeah.
disparity?
The portal valve alternative puts water in the 11 miles, but the dam is 1 mile further from the portal valve, so it's 12 miles. Yep. Okay, so let's see if we can get through these following items quickly. They're pretty straightforward. We have before us AM 583-2024, Amendment Number 3 with Statewide Services, Inc., DBA ESS Support Services Worldwide for Congregate Food Services for the Municipality of Anchorage. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Mr. Chair,
Uh,
at this
oh,
point, may I please be excused?
Yeah, please, you're excused, Miss Zalatel, for nature of a personal.
And the remaining
interest.
items are, okay,
Yep,
thank you.
all the remaining
Have a
items.
good afternoon.
Thank you.
And I will second.
So there's a motion to approve by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Volland. Any discussion on this? Mr. Falsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just say I appreciate the Assembly and the bidders' patience with this new administration as we get up to speed. Just by way of setting the table, everyone is well aware that we are currently operating a shelter out of the Solid Waste Services Administrative Building, the former Solid Waste Service Administrative Building. That operation has for some time now been operated by Henning, and food has been provided by ESS. Those contracts were slated to expire July 1st. They were extended till August 1st. Under the prior administration, there was a single invitation to bid with two schedules that addressed how the shelter would be operated and how food would be provided after August 1st. Initially, we brought some documents to you to award contracts under that invitation to bid. There was some question about the potential awardees' ability to perform and qualifications. The punchline is this: after further review, the administration decided that the ITB process, that procurement vehicle,
was not best designed to give us what we think might be the optimal approach. And so we're asking to go back to the drawing board and issue instead a request for proposals that hopefully will allow us to attend to some of the issues that folks raised. The intent, in order to do that, in order to have a request for proposals without a break in service, we need to keep the status quo in place. So what you have before you is an extension of Henning's operation contract, and the next site, or this one is the food ESS contract. The next one is the extension of the Henning's operations contract. And with apologies for somewhat whipsawing the folks who were involved in the previous ITB, hopefully they will see the request for proposals, bid on the request for proposals, and will be in a better position to come up with a long-term solution in October. I also, if I can editorialize briefly, I want to say very special thanks to the purchasing department. I think we were very well served. Hopefully you feel like you were very well served by this latest change. We're very happy to have thought partners who helped us through all of this. So that's the proposal. For these next two items, we're just preserving the status quo while we go back to the drawing board for a request for proposals.
All right, so I'm going to ask for a motion to extend by 10 minutes.
So moved.
Second.
So there's a motion to extend by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Presverdia. I'm going to ask for unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, we are extended to 2:20. So I have a couple of people in the queue. First, Ms. Brawley, I believe, and then Mr. Presverdia.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if you could just speak briefly to the status of funding for these items. Like, how are we fully funded to pay for these interim contracts, knowing that they are interim and there's another process coming? And then the request that I will make to be provided offline or at a later time is, can we have a full accounting of how much it costs to run emergency cold weather shelter, looking back through the prior year? I think we do have those numbers, and then projecting forward. And part of the reason I asked that is because once we do receive the state grant money, this is during the summer months, that state grant money that we receive successfully for FY25 will be presumably paying for part of this as well. So we want to make sure that we are having accurate numbers that we can report back if and when we are asked by state legislators or by others, and also just making sure that we are keeping our funding in line with the services that we're providing. Thank you.
Through the chair to Assemblymember Brawley, the insouciant part of me wants to say we have a lot of accounting challenges, but I'm sure we can provide you that information on the accounting for what it has cost for emergency cold weather shelter and what we project it will be going forward. As to your earlier question, these items have all been fund certified with reference to the to be received state grant. I'm hopeful that we will have that squared away so that we don't need to necessarily come back to you before August 1st to keep everything in operation. It is possible that because of timing, we'll need to do a bridge appropriation, and that will require a public hearing. So we are working that issue now, and it may well be that we need to notice something next week for action on July 30th. But either way, the money is in hand. It's just the question is whether the money is coming. Whether we have it in hand is another question that we are not take up as a next week problem.
Thank you. Mr. Presverdia.
Thank you. Just some clarifying questions. The items at our meeting on Tuesday in this regard were postponed. Is that correct? They were postponed, and these are new items that we're looking at here. I'm just
So I believe, except for 5B, the
right,
items
4A and 4B.
right, the other items were not moved at all.
They were not moved. They were
Right.
not postponed. They were just not moved.
Right. And so what happens is they dropped off, and what would have happened today if the intent was to proceed under those vehicles is we would have seen essentially a new resolution with the same content be on this agenda, just like you see 5B.
Okay, my memory must be bad. I thought we postponed them to this meeting, so we would discuss them. So that's
5B we did.
5B. we
And
did.
so, Madam Clerk, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the action that we took on the two was we took no action.
So one of them was not even laid on the table. The other one, there was no action.
Right.
Okay,
That's what I
and so this, what is of 4A, is 4A in place of 5B? Is that what we're saying is that you have extended this contract with ESS and until, first of all, let me ask, until what date? What is the date that is extended towards for the 221,000? Item 4A, as I'm referring to.
Through the chair to Assemblymember Presverdia. So as in item 4A, the new period of performance will go through October 15th, 2024.
And that is the current provider.
Correct.
Okay. And so my other question is, item 5B, that was intended to be the new provider.
Also correct.
Okay. And so that helps me to understand it. And the same thing for 4B, that Henning is the current provider, and that is an extension also to October?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So I believe we're still on item 4A, which is ESS. Any further discussion on this one? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Member Bronga,
Yes.
Member Volland,
Yes.
Member Brawley,
Yes.
Member Solt,
Yes.
Member Presverdia,
Yes.
Member Constant,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes.
Member Rivera,
Yes.
Member Littlefield,
Yes.
Member Martinez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the vote passes 10-0.
Thank you. On a vote of 10-0, AM 583-2024 has passed the body. Next, we have item 4B, which is AM 584-2024, Amendment Number 4 with Henning Inc., Henning for Congregate Sheltering Operational Services. What's the will of the body?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Presverdia, seconded by Mr. Volland. Any discussion? Ms. Braga.
Thank you. I am a bit uncomfortable. We had a big to-do about text messages that were shared at a meeting. There was going to be investigation, and nothing's been done, and we're extending the contract to October 15th. That doesn't feel right. I'm also concerned about the provider that has put out feelers to get employees. People have they've given notice at their previous jobs to start as shelter operators, and it just doesn't feel right to me. And I want to express that.
Anything else? No. Okay. Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I do want to acknowledge those concerns, because those things did appear to happen. I guess I will also note the practical reality is there's, up to 200 people living in this building, and the intent is to keep it going, and that there's been a lot of work to ensure that there's not a gap where everybody has to leave for 30 days, even in the midst of, say, a roof replacement that will happen, and all these other challenges, right? Funding challenges, the timing of funding. And so just to acknowledge, I think there are some serious questions that we need to ask. And also, I do not want those things to be at the expense of people who suddenly have to leave where they have been sheltering for probably months potentially, or even just the last night that they showed up. And so I am torn on this one. I think it is challenging. And I think it's a reality that there are very few people and organizations in this city that are willing and qualified and able to run shelter. And then I will also note, for better or worse, being a contractor for the government, there is a lot of uncertainty until that contract is signed. And so it is a challenge, having been on the other side, certainly not providing this level of service, but there are many representations in those documents that you are responsible for the cost to prepare your bid, all of those other things. And so it is unfortunate the way that this particular situation is played out, but it is the way that this happens until the contract is signed and approved. So I think it's just been a difficult period with this particular situation. Thanks.
All right. Number of people in the queue now. Mr. Volland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, certainly share Member Branga's concern. I will say, from what I hear, this location is being well operated, and I think it's interesting to think about the contrast between, it's not in my district, so maybe the emails aren't coming to me, but I hear little to nothing about this location, contrasted with when the Sullivan Arena was being used for shelter. At the same time, I am curious, and I guess we have Acting Director Rash here. Is that investigation ongoing? What is the health department doing to look into the concerns that were raised by the Anchorage Assembly? Is there going to be a report that will come before us at some
I
time?
will jump in on that one if I might. The report draft was delivered and I think members might have seen it, and there have been some questions in response that are being formulated because there are questions about the sufficiency of the review. And so it's simply at this time preliminary and too early to make any conclusions relative to the content that was provided. And so the reality is it's a little bit more time on the question of the investigation report, but I think you have a copy of the draft in your email.
Okay, I will look for that. But I still want to hear from Acting Director Rash, if that's okay, Mr. Chair, just in terms of what further, I guess, if further information is expected, what that timeline might look like.
Through the chair. So I think really what it looks like is quality improvement, looking at continuous ways to improve operations. If there are concerns, addressing those immediately, documenting those concerns, and then coming to a conclusion and or a path forward quickly. Again, to what Member Brawley said, there are individuals residing there, so we need to make sure that their care is first and foremost. And so I think a timeline would be dependent upon what comes forth.
Okay, thank you.
I can put you, but she's not leaving anywhere. I'll put you back in the queue. We might need some more time for the meeting, but next is Mr. Presverdia.
Thank you. And I'll just, for Ms. Bronger, I'm not sure I've seen it in my inbox, so I'd like to, maybe we could send it if it hasn't been sent. My question is to Mr. Falsey and or any of the other representatives of the administration. Are you aware of the issues that we're talking about? Are you comfortable with moving forward with this provider for this short period of time? I'm assuming you are, but we haven't given you the opportunity to sort of speak to this. I'm assuming you're aware of it, but if you could speak to it a bit and just share your comfort level at this point moving forward with this contractor as is.
Through the chair to Assemblymember Presverdia, yes and yes. Generally aware, have seen the draft of the report. Also comfortable that this is what we believe to be the best option to get us to the place we want to go. So comfortable with this as an interim solution, and then we hope to have a more permanent solution for you on the middle of October. Thanks.
Mr. Rivera.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'm somewhat surprised that Henning was interested in doing a contract that, in my opinion, really isn't short. It's practically 3 months. Everything I heard was Henning wanted to get out of the shelter business and focus on its housing or work. So I guess, did the administration contemplate a shorter window of time for this contract rather than what we have before us, which is essentially a 3-month extension?
Through the chair to Assemblymember Rivera. No, and that is only because of the practical realities of our timeline. So first, we had a constraint of needing the shelter to be operated as of August 1st. And then on the back end, why did we go all the way to October 15th? Well, practically, it will take some time to put together a request for proposal package. It will take some time to float that onto the street and allow qualified bidders to make a submission. It will take some time to have a review panel impaneled and then to review the RFP, and then it will take some time for the assembly to approve that. 2.5 months is actually not a completely generous amount of time for us to complete all that work, but we think it is a practical amount of time. We were concerned that we would be creating a problem for ourselves if we looked to a shorter extension where we would inevitably have a gap in services because we couldn't complete that procurement in time.
Okay, then I guess my follow-up to that is if the administration believes that this is the best pathway forward, then fine. But has the administration considered bringing back some type of third-party oversight through the extension of this contract? Because Again, there have been serious concerns raised about this particular.
Uh-oh. I'm going to take
He's
this
still there.
opportunity to ask for a motion to extend probably 15 more minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to extend by 15 minutes, seconded, or moved by Ms. Raleigh, seconded by Mr. Vaughn. Is there any objection? Hearing and seeing none, we are extended to 2:35. Are you still there, Mr. Rivera? Mr. Rivera?
Sorry about that.
There
I
you
got
go.
disconnected, but I'm back.
Just so you know, while you were gone, we moved to extend to 2:35. You still have the floor.
Okay, thanks. I think I pretty much finished my question, but I'll restate it. Has the administration, especially considering all of the serious concerns, which, you know, in my opinion, are valid concerns that we need to take seriously to protect the clients being served, has the administration considered some type of third-party oversight continuation?
Through the chair to Assemblymember Rivera, I can say that I am not aware of those conversations yet, but that does not mean they haven't happened. I can definitely take them away from the table and get back to you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks. And just a matter of calendaring, this goes into effect August 1. We have a meeting June 30, so that item could be taken up at a subsequent meeting. So I have myself in the queue now, and I just want to offer that in discussions with potential paths forward, there were some confusing elements. Folks saw some kind of emails back and forth about bid 1, bid 2, and what's accurate and correct. And in the end, the conclusion was drawn with Assembly leadership and the administration that there were too many things to unfold within the procurement because it was an ITB, which just doesn't really suit for these kind of projects. And so the cleanest way to proceed was to extend the existing contracts because they've already been procured under the code. They've already been awarded by the Assembly. And that way there isn't any gray. And so when we come back with a process that actually is the right process to be used for such a procurement, then the outcome of that one will be the same, a more as contemplated following of the rules, and the decision should be more clear. Instead of the simple lowest price bidder gets the award, it would be an RFP, which allows for some more kind of flexibility in the contemplation. And yeah, I'm sorry I misspoke earlier that the report hasn't been shared with folks. I thought that it had. And that conversation is an ongoing conversation because in the end, as quality assurance demands, as Ms. Rash had said, we need to make sure that the folks we are sheltering are in an environment that is up to standards. And so we have our shelter licensing and a bunch of other pieces to be reviewed in that conversation. So I'll put you back in the queue. Next, I have Ms. Braga in the queue.
I wasn't sure if you remembered. Thank you. I know that you've made up your mind on this, but the fact that there were renewal options on this contract, it would have gave an excellent opportunity for us to see if they were up to muster. And it seems odd that a competing organization is like, oh, I don't think they're as good as we are. You know, Lee Sloan could have said that about me running as Assembly, and woohoo. But anyway, I'm disappointed with this whole thing. It doesn't seem right, and I just wanted to bring that up. And I was going to ask about the oversight also. I've had someone who has commented that the 200 a night that never fluctuates at the shelter right now doesn't seem quite right.
Thank you. Next, I have Mr. Salt, and then Mr. Vaughn, and then Ms. Brawley.
Thank you. I just want to remind everyone that I think we had a pretty successful transition from shelter to housing this winter. One of the best that I remember just being on the Assembly. That was, I think, a large part due to Henning. But if we reached out to Henning to see if they're willing to accept this extension or future invitations to bid.
Ms. Falsey.
Thank you.
Through the chair, the question was, have we reached out to Henning for future invitations to bid?
To see if they'll do this work and future.
I know that we reached out to them for this extension. I don't know that, well, we have not actually issued a new RFP yet for future shelter operation services, but I would be shocked if they are not both aware of it on their own, and if they don't, also hear about it from our processes as well. So I suppose the formal answer is no, but certainly we can.
Thank you. Was that sufficient, Mr. Salt?
Yes, it was. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Mr. Bond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly share Mr. Salt's gratitude for the amount of people we've been able to see enter into housing. I will say that there's other entities like the Coalition, for instance, who have done a lot of that work as well alongside Henning. I'm actually pretty frustrated by the framing of we have to keep these people sheltered, like obviously, but it does seem weird to me. Part of our job is making sure that bidders and operators are responsive and responsible. And so to have some members have had access to this draft report, but others haven't. I've searched my inbox. I can't find it. Has that been shared or not is the question.
I'm guessing it has not been shared
Okay.
broadly.
So for me, it's not a great feeling to have not had the opportunity to review that and then be asked to continue to fund the same operator. So I guess the question I would ask is how urgent is it that this gets approved today? Can it be taken up on June 30th in advance of August? I personally, I would like to feel better. I'd like to be able to review that report before moving forward with this.
Through the chair to Member Bond, I hear what you're saying, and I certainly think it is not the current administration's intent to jam you up. And apologies, as these are a little bit of edge effects and transition effects. On the question of whether we could delay this to July 30th, I feel pretty uncomfortable with that, only because I think at the best case scenario, we would ask the assembly to pass this, then do the immediate reconsideration trick so that we could immediately let a contract. But if we want services to continue on August 1st, I just don't know practically if we could pull that off. So at least I'll say, as what I know now, our preference would be that we act today. But I guess I can't give you a guarantee answer one way or the other if we would be able to keep the shelter operating on August 1st if we kick this to July 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Brawley.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we just don't have a lot of options. I guess that's what I'm looking at, which is not a great feeling. Sorry, I totally lost my question, so I'm going to take myself out of the queue.
Yeah, so I just put myself back in, and I would just note that the fundamental problem that is driving this conflict right here of we couldn't use the ones before because of the chaos, it comes down to the procurement vehicle that was chosen. The ITB process doesn't, in fact, allow for a responsive and responsible conversation. It's literally the lowest bidder wins. And that's the only value that's allowed under the procurement that was used. And it's generally used for the purchase of rocks and gravel or toilet paper or other things. And for whatever reason, the previous administration chose an ITB for this process, which was never the proper vehicle. And that's what puts us in this opinion where we can't actually do an evaluation based on anything other than price if we use the tool that was presented to us. And that is where the questions are at. Now, on the question of the investigation, I've been in discussions with the Department of Law, and I think that it's resolving around, in order to be presented, we need to have an executive session because there are personnel matters involved, and it has to happen in a manner that protects the interests of any of the parties because there's nothing yet that is conclusive. And so that will be scheduled. But again, we've been in discussions about what is the goal. And it's tricky. And so, but it isn't, I have emails for several days that have been trying to get to the point where this thing is moving forward again. So thanks, Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, I apologize. And this is germane, I think, moving forward. That's why I wanted to bring it up. And I don't, our Assembly Council is not in the room currently, but a question for folks who can give us legal guidance. So, Muni Attorney, we have been contacted by, I think, both of the bidders in that ITB process by email. And I believe I asked this question as well, just kind of what guidelines we need to be aware of. But as we're moving forward, I just want to be very mindful as an Assembly member that I do not want to insert myself in the procurement process. I don't think that's proper. And so my question is, what guardrails would you give us or advice would you give us on whether and how to engage with further communications we get, whether it's directly or to all members? And just want to understand the legal guidelines, but also, again, I'm noting that there is also perception issues. And so my intent is not to engage with those potential contractors at this time, again, just to avoid further complications. But I'm just asking what legal guardrails we have or don't have.
I'm going to kick this question to Mr. Falsey just because he's been more involved and understands the risks at issue here.
Through the chair to Assemblymember Brawley. We should make Matt Hurt do it because he walked in and only caught the very end of the question. But yeah, but I think the real answer is that we can give you better advice if we take this away from the table and come back to you later. The extemporaneous advice is I don't think that there are hard ex parte communication rules about this, but formally the Assembly's action is ultimately to approve or not to approve or to refer this to the bidding review board. And that probably informs the utility of a lot of these interactions, at least for now. One side benefit of the approach that we're recommending here is that hopefully we have sort of cleared the air and rendered a lot of that side conversation no longer strictly necessary. And then hopefully going forward, we're going to bring you cleaner procurement actions that don't result in that kind of chatter. We'll see. But I think that's the best I have for you right now.
And I'll just add one comment to that, which is from where my office sits, and we have been watching this, it seems much cleaner and safer to go forward with the new process.
I would add that Mr. Gates put forward a really thorough analysis of the procedures for bidding review, and there are two paths that open that conversation. I think his advice ultimately, though, was be very careful in discussions with potential bidders. And when you take it away, because you may be in a position at some point down the road where you have to make a judgment, and just be careful. All right, anyone else? The question on this one is motion to approve AM 584-2024. Hearing and seeing no further discussion, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Martinez? Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Littlefield?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Ms. Bronca?
No.
Mr. Volland?
Yes.
Ms. Brawley?
Yes.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Mr. Presverdia?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes 9-1.
Thank you. On a vote of 9-1, AM 584-2024 is passed the body. I'm going to have to ask one more time. Is there a motion to extend 5 minutes?
So moved.
The motion to extend by Ms. Barley, seconded by Mr. Presverdy. Any objection? Hearing and seeing no objection, we are extended to 2:40. So we have one more item on the agenda, item 5B, which is AM 569-2024, recommendation of award of contract to Sammy's Kitchen for congregate sheltering food services. The request of the body and the administration, or the request of leadership of the administration is a motion to postpone indefinitely.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Volland. Any discussion? Go ahead, Ms. Brawley.
Who moved?
I have moved by Ms. Brawley, seconded by Mr. Volland. Ms.
Yeah.
Brawley.
Yeah, just briefly, given the previous conversation, but we've already now extended the existing food contract, and this, it sounds like we'll go out to bid again. So basically there's no desire to implement this. Is that right? Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, members may proceed to vote.
Mr. Presverdia?
Yes.
Mr. Stolt?
Yes.
Ms. Brawley?
Yes.
Mr. Volland?
Yes.
Ms. Bronca?
Yes.
Mr. Constant?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rivera?
Yes.
Mr. Littlefield,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
the motion passes 10-0.
On a vote of 10-0, AM 569-2024 has been postponed indefinitely. Next, we have audience participation. Any member of the public wish to be heard? Anyone at all? Seeing hearing none, we'll move on to assembly member comments. Any member? Hearing seen none, I would seek a motion to adjourn. I did. Yep, thank you. Any, seeing hearing none, motion to adjourn? Anyone?
So moved.
Moves. All right, we are adjourned.
Cut me a door.
Really good. Started on removing top state on my front bed.
Just hit it with a crowbar.